It's a bit strange to be covering Ocarina of Time before Majora's Mask, since Majora's Mask is the creepy Zelda game, but beyond the action-packed adventure across a fantasy land, Ocarina of Time is held together through unsettling storytelling, imagery, locations, and more. As opposed to being on the nose like Majora's Mask, Ocarina of Time allows for its creepiness to become a natural component of Hyrule, mirroring the darkness we do our best to ignore in the real world. In that sense, Ocarina of Time isn't black and white, but rather realistic and immersive. That's the brilliance of the game, but enough of me rambling. Let's dive deep into the creepy side of Ocarina of Time. The first point I really wanted to touch upon is dissecting what exactly Link's journey means. Link grew up in the Kokiri forest and was under the assumption that he was a Kokiri, but upon receiving the Great Deku Tree's call to action at the start of the game, Link learns he's a Hyrulean, capable of aging and outgrowing the forest the rest of the Kokiri are bound to. More on that later. The first part of the game is simplistic, yet profound in a dark way. It calls into question our understanding of identity, and what it means to realize you aren't who you thought you were. As adults, I feel we grasp onto our identities. We might feel prideful towards them, indifferent, hateful. Regardless, our identities are bound to us, and allow us to view the world the way we do. Now imagine having that shattered at Link's age, when his identity is still maturing. That's what I find unsettling here, the idea Nintendo planted that the core of our existence can be destroyed at a moment's notice. But let's move a bit forward in time, no pun intended. Link wields the Master Sword in order to travel 7 years into the future. Now you not only have a child that's likely undergoing an identity crisis, but also has to grow up too fast out of necessity. Having to grow up too fast as a child in order to resolve problems you don't fully understand is a relatable concept among many people, and it's usually never a good thing. Having a life experience as sacred as childhood ripped away is tragic, and obviously, children are not equipped to handle adult problems. Like Link being frozen for 7 years, a part of you unfortunately fades away. Ocarina of Time may be a game about a funny elf man who stops the big bad wolf, but having such piercing connections to the real world is what I think is an often overlooked part of what made the game resonate with so many people. But no doubt, the way the game occasionally breaks the escapism is creepy. I mean, we're here to be a legendary hero and not be reminded of our reality, right? Next, I want to go over how the land of Hyrule changes during Link's 7-year slumber as Ganondorf takes over. The first and most stark difference you'll come across is found immediately after leaving the Temple of Time upon becoming adult Link, the Market of Castletown. Once a bustling town square full of musicians, couples, merchants, and dogs, the market in the future is post-apocalyptic, abandoned. It's now also home to one of the franchise's creepiest enemies, the Re-Dead, who can freeze time and wrap around the Link with a blood-curdling scream. The market sets the tone for the rest of the game. It really puts into focus that although this game can be enjoyed as a simple fantasy world, the locations and inhabitants of Hyrule are meant to be taken seriously. All of the characters experience the consequences of the storyline. This also has real-world implications. It's unfortunately common for residents of towns, cities, and countries to have their entire lives uprooted and relocated elsewhere. The cause of this can be a variety of reasons, but regardless, Ocarina of Time captures the darkness of that real dread brilliantly through its imagery. Another location that drastically changes in the 7-year time span is Zora's domain. Once a beautiful cave filled with relaxing pools of water, Zora's domain becomes frozen over and abandoned. Even King Zora is frozen. Link eventually breaks the curse, but Zora's domain is never the same. Zora's domain is another reminder of how the places we call home aren't permanent. Change can happen over time or at a moment's notice, but our physical comfort zones and safe havens are not as everlasting as we like to imagine them to be. Finally, I want to discuss a couple of other locations that showcase how Ocarina of Time's incredible atmospheric storytelling really gives me the creeps. Let's start with the Water Temple. Yes, it's certainly the most annoying dungeon in the game, arguably the series as well, but here's what creeps me out about it. The fact that it's a confusing underwater labyrinth. The thought of getting lost underwater is terrifying, and I find the music in this area really captures that idea as well. You should be feeling calm amongst the water, at peace even, but there's a lingering sense of anxiety. What really gets me about this temple, however, is the room where you fight Dark Link. It's an empty void with ankle-deep water and a dead tree at the center. Very dreamlike and almost reminds me of a sensory deprivation tank. Maybe that was the idea here? Not sure what the tree in the middle is supposed to represent. There's a lot of theories regarding it, such as a lone tree references samurais, or the tree acts as a subconscious reference point so you don't wander off too far. Either way, to me, it's incredibly unnerving and definitely adds to the already uneasy atmosphere of not only the room, but the water temple as a whole. I mean, how could a tree be dead in a temple full of water? Finally, there's the Shadow Temple. This area is a lot more direct in terms of creepiness, and I had to include it because I find it to be the creepiest location in the series. Honorable mentions go out to the bottom of the well in Kakariko Village and Dampé's grave. Hundreds, likely thousands of skulls make up the walls of the temple. The enemies are grotesque monsters, which become even more disturbing thanks to N64 graphics. A dense fog hangs low to the ground, and finally, deadly traps are littered almost everywhere. All the while, this chilling song plays on repeat. The dungeon boss is kind of creepy. Reminds me of Andross from Star Fox, which is a little unsettling, but I feel traveling through a literal torture dungeon is 10 times more disturbing. I find it poetic in a sense that in order to rid Hyrule of the ultimate evil, Link must journey through Hyrule's darkest secret, but at the same time, I could have done without it. The Shadow Temple isn't a bad dungeon by any stretch of the imagination, more tedious than anything during a playthrough. It's simply Nintendo's excellent job of atmospheric storytelling that makes me want to get out of the Shadow Temple as quickly as possible. Before I end off, there's a few smaller details from Ocarina of Time I don't want to overlook. There's the fact that at nighttime in Hyrule Fields Past, undead enemies just pop out of the ground while the drawbridge to the safe castle town is raised up. And, after Zelda and Impa escape Ganondorf's assault, Child Link can listen to the final words of a dying guard. Or how about the fact that a Kokiri who wanders into the woods becomes a Stalfos? No matter which details you look at, Ocarina of Time's world is full of disturbing occurrences that make the game feel all the more immersive. Hyrule feels truly lived in, full of good and bad, and if we feel that way, what does that say about our own reality? Ocarina of Time is as cookie cutter as you can get with a Zelda game. Although it may not be a disturbing philosophical commentary like Majora's Mask, Ocarina of Time has just enough dread plaguing its world to make me feel uneasy while playing it. I'm sure there's a lot of other details and locations I didn't mention given the scope of this game, so please comment down below anything else you think should have been included in this video. Also, you can bet I'll be covering Majora's Mask too in the future. Anyways, that's it for me. Thanks and have a good one.